on those boards and committees? See none, I have one for 7.2, the TLC. Looking at the minutes, they're adopted, so I'm not too sure exactly what date they were adopted, but maybe Councillor Hansard can provide some light on that. So the date that these minutes were adopted, and the fact that I see that Councillor Hansard was not there. We usually have an alternate, which was Councillor Meyer, and I do not see him listed there either. So was there an error in communication that we had one member of council not attend?
I'll field that one. No, Councillor Hansard did inform me of it. I unfortunately missed it in my calendar.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that. And just again, we have alternates that that we can on certain boards that we can have them. If we can just double check the calendars and make sure those I's are dotted and T's are crossed, so that we have representation there. So thank you. Councillor Hansard as well. I'm too sure. Do you know when these minutes were adopted?
They were adopted at, well, this says, sorry, I've got to look at which meeting. Sometimes the meetings, the agenda, it's October 27. That is the meeting when I was not present.
That's correct. But right on the top there says adopted. So at a subsequent meeting, the TLC board would have adopted these minutes to then for us to see them.
And are you speaking of 2/10/2022, where, sorry, that's not it. His next motion was approves a policy B006 committee of the board? Committees of the board, is that the motion?
No, Councillor Hansard, I'm looking at page 18 of 46.
Okay, I'm on 19.
Okay. For these minutes to be adopted and to come to council, I'm just asking which date this adopted.
Well, that's an interesting subject. It says it's the September 15 board meeting. Then it moved by T. Haas that the Board of Directors adopt the September 15, 2022 meeting minutes.
Okay. Not too sure when the board meetings are. If we can get some clarity on that.
Once a month, and I would have been at that meeting. So I can, what is it you would like me to get corrected so that it's really clear?
Yeah, so in terms of that as well as when the minutes were adopted, because those would be the minutes from the previous meeting. So the September minutes would have came to the October meeting. So that therefore it was accepted in
That
October.
is the October meeting.
Yes, in the October meeting, which these minutes are for, you would have probably adopted them in November. So I'm trying to figure out the date.
Okay, I just need to really understand what you're asking. These minutes are for
October 27th.
October 27 meeting. We approved the September 15
Yes,
board minutes.
right. And these minutes are adopted. So when did the board adopt the October 27th meeting minutes?
We're having that meeting. Oh, sorry. That's a good question. I was at that meeting.
Yes, because
I will get that done.
for it to come to our council tables to see it, it had to be adopted.
Okay, but we have not, you see, we were running, I'm wondering if we're running behind in getting the minutes to our council package. I'll double check. We have a meeting coming up on Wednesday.
Okay, to town staff. I'll go to Council Pledge, go first.
Yes, thank you. Just for clarity, what section of this is it that you're referring to that it shows the adoption of what you're asking?
So right underneath on page 18, where it says adopted. Top right corner where it says adopted. So I'm just trying to figure out when it was adopted, and because I had a question regarding
That's odd.
the thing is if this can be changed or not, because so I'm trying to figure out the timing of the adoption. Administration, anything to report? Do we know when the TLC meetings are?
Maybe just a quick comment. I don't know, and the general manager may have the date of the meeting, but I would expect, as per course, these minutes would have been adopted at the November meeting of the TLC board. I'm not sure the date unless general manager happens to know.
Your worship, that meeting was conducted on the 24th of November.
Okay, so the November 24th meeting date was when these minutes were adopted.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not too sure, because we don't see them because they're not in adopted form yet, so it's draft form, we will not see it. But Councillor Hanson, may I ask, were you at the November 24th meeting, the TLC?
That was.
Okay, so then I'll ask the question, then, because if you were there, then you would have had a chance to accept it and vote in favor of this adoption. Under page 18, under call to order, I noticed on the minutes that's been adopted, it says T. Hayes called the October 27th the meeting. So was that date? Because I noticed that the chair was also present. I find it interesting that the chair did not call.
The chair stepped back. I don't know why the chair stepped back to let him call for the adoption of minutes. Maybe he was late a few minutes, but it doesn't report that, does it?
Because it's pointed out here that the meeting started late at 6:05 versus the normal time of 6 o'clock. But it also says that T. Hayes called the meeting to order.
And I think that our chair was running a few minutes late.
Okay, usually on minutes, through our own, what we've seen in the past is that when somebody comes late, there's a time of when the member came into the meeting and when they left.
I will double check that. We have a meeting Wednesday.
Okay, if you can check on that, because I'm just trying to understand clarity, understanding why a member of the board called the meeting to get to the order without having, even though that the chair was present as identified in the adopted minutes.
That's a good question.
Okay, because
I'll double check it.
on page 20, the chair signed off.
I will double check it on Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you, and then just an email update would be sufficient, just so I understand what's happening.
To email everybody?
Sure.
All right.
Thank you. Any more questions for clarity, understanding, or errors on those council committee minutes? Okay, see none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Okay. Move on to number 8 of our agenda is bylaws. We have nothing scheduled tonight. So move on to business items. 9.1 is the Planning Advisory Committee member at large. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Worship. And just to clarify, the Planning Advisory Committee had 2 vacancies on up for candidates to be applied for, and administration received an application from Doug Anderson, and the candidate was interviewed, and administration is recommending this evening with this report to council to appoint Doug Anderson to the Planning Advisory Committee for a 2-year term. Those are administration's comments, Your Worship, and we'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Okay. Thank you. Members of council, we've seen this before in terms of appointing to our committees and boards. Any questions or comments regarding the presentation? See none. Just double check that there is still 1 vacant position, so that we'll continue advertisements until that position is filled.
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Loyens for the motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Town Council appoint Doug Anderson to the Planning Advisory Committee.
Okay. Any debate on that motion? Call the question. All in favor? Okay, 7. Okay, move on to 9.2, which is the public participation policy update. Go ahead, administration.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to the rest of council, thank you for this opportunity to present the public participation policy, which is up for its 4-year renewal. Just going to go through the policy here fairly quickly. The purpose is to establish the approach and circumstances in which the town of Stony Plain will engage the public and stakeholders on issues and decisions affecting the town. This policy applies to administration of the town of Stony Plain. It does run through the definitions. What you are going to notice is the categories. This is the levels and the types of public participation. It also talks about communication, the different approaches in the definitions. It lists off all the examples of approaches that you can use in public participation opportunities. It talks about the public, who are the residents of interest. Public participation is approaches for the public and other stakeholders to provide input in the decision-making process. And stakeholders, of course, are people and groups or organizations who have an interest in or affect by an outcome of the decision. And of course, you know who town council, and the town, of course, is the town of Stony Plain. The town values public participation and recognizes that the public and stakeholders' input play a critical role in good governance. As such, the town is committed to providing effective communication and appropriate public participation approaches to obtain the best possible information to support the decision-making process. All public participation will be undertaken in accordance with the Municipal Government Act, of course also known as the MGA, the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, and any other applicable legislation. The town will conduct public participation approaches when establishing or reviewing programs and services, identifying priorities in the town's municipal development plan, the MDP, transacting council priorities as outlined in the strategic plan, formulating recommendations to council regarding the corporate plan, and of course, otherwise directed by council. The categories you'll notice have changed from the old policy. Connect is the term that we will now use for low participation. The town will keep residents informed, listen to feedback, and consider the information gathered in the decision-making process. Involve would be the next step up. The town will work with residents to ensure all viewpoints are heard and considered in the alternatives developed and provide feedback on how the input influenced the decision. The next level is called partner. The town will keep residents informed, listen to feedback, and consider the information gathered in the decision-making process. And the highest level of public participation is empower. The town will provide tools for the decision-making process to be directly in the hands of the public. So town council shall consider public input obtained through public participation approaches while balancing the public interests and other considerations as part of the decision-making process. Town council may promote public participation approaches and provide council member representation. Administration shall determine if public participation is necessary, shall identify the appropriate category of public participation, shall communicate the public participation approaches, shall implement public participation approaches, and shall review, recommend, and report to town council and the public and stakeholders on input gathered during public participation approaches. This council policy shall be reviewed by administration within 4 years of being implemented, with any changes being submitted to council for approval. At this time, we are recommending that town council approve public participation policy and to repeal the public participation policy number 031. I welcome any questions and comments at this time.
Thank you for the presentation. Members of council, any questions and comments regarding the public participation update on the policies? Looking at the agenda, there is a cleaned version, and then there's also the red line version, and also the old one as well, so that council can make proper comparisons and comments if they need. And I'll ask members of council to please refer to a page number so we can all follow along. Councillor Hanson, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to our manager, senior manager of communications. I just would like to, I wonder if it would be possible, because we do have people who watch live stream, et cetera, for those who are watching, participating this evening. If, obviously we don't make changes just because we feel like making changes. We usually make changes to make things better. And I'm wondering if you could speak for just a moment regarding the idea around public engagement and clarify that for the public, because a lot of times people think the public should speak on everything, and we have elections for that, but just so that they understand maybe a little clearer when we will actually engage in the public in whatever way communications decides is best. Am I making myself clear, my question clear?
Absolutely. Through your worship to Councillor Hansard, public participation, there are many different criteria that you could look at as to when it is appropriate to do public participation. If it is a controversial topic and you want to get buy-in from the public, that's always a good time to engage with public participation. If you want to listen and you're going to take that feedback from the public and include it in your decision-making process, that would be a good time to do public participation. When you don't want to do public participation would be if you're not willing to listen. So that would be a situation where the decision is already made. The last thing you want to do is go to the public and ask them for their opinion and feedback, but you've already made the decision. So you would want to do public participation in situations where the decision hasn't been made, you want to hear from the public and you're willing to listen and make an informed decision based on what they say. But you certainly do not want to do public participation on everything because, as you mentioned, we have elected you fine people to be our council representatives and you do represent the public. Public participation can slow down the decision-making process and it does use a lot of resources and it can become quite expensive as well.
Okay, so supplementary question, Your Worship. You use the phrase, Ms. Barsby, that if we don't wish to engage with the public, mostly council is very open to engaging. Is this particularly in cases where council has already included items, say, in a budget, and they've been approved and they have stood for time, and now it's simply a matter of implementation, and we're not going back to get people's ideas about whether this is a good idea or not? Would that be an example of when we would not wish to re-engage the public because the decisions and all of that engagement has already happened?
Through your worship to Councillor Hansard, absolutely, that's a good example. If the decision's already been made, then you do not want to go out to the public. Also, there are a lot of administrative decisions that have already been made that are just part of our daily routine that you wouldn't go to the public for. For example, if the Zamboni were to break down at Glen Hall Centennial Arena, you wouldn't go to the public and say, should we buy a new Zamboni? That is a decision that administration could just make on their own.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship.
Any other questions for clarity and understanding? Turning to page 35. This is one of the changes that administration is proposing to change. It says, administration under 5.5.1 shall determine if public participation is necessary and shall identify the appropriate category of public participation. So does that mean council does not have the right or the ability to change that because it's not under our purview?
Your worship, this policy is your direction to administration to implement public participation when necessary. By passing this policy, you've already given administration that responsibility to do public participation when it is necessary. If council feels that they do want to weigh in on a case-by-case basis, you certainly have the power to do that by making a motion at any point in time.
Thank you. So in terms of that, so if something comes up to council and under the heading there's communications, and then I think that's all written out there, if council deems that it might require a little more input from the residents, we can ask for that during that time.
Your worship, certainly that is something that council can ask for. It doesn't need to be formalized because you've already passed, if you pass this policy, then you have passed and given that permission to administration to up that, but it's also something that you could do formally as well.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any more questions for clarity, understanding? See now, Councillor Hansard, please.
Your Worship, I move that Town Council approve Public Participation Policy CAO 057 and to repeal Public Participation Policy CAO 031.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Hansard. Members of Council, any questions, comments, and debate on the motion? Okay, see none. Before I call the question, just the administration, can you provide the difference between approving a policy and then repealing an old one or amending a policy. As members of council, we've seen different factors of that. Sometimes policies and bylaws come in for amendment and others come for approval and repeal. Can administration just provide a little bit of clarity of the difference in that so that, council has a better understanding and also those that are watching have an understanding as well?
Thank you, Your Worship. At this time, administration does not amend policies. It just makes it cleaner moving forward. So all our policies are repealed and replaced with new policies.
Okay. And then so when we amend bylaws then?
At this time, land use bylaws are amended. All other bylaws, again, to keep things cleaner, are repealed and new bylaws put in place.
Okay. Thank you for that clarity. That provides a little bit of more clarity for me as well in terms of when I talk to residents of why we repeal certain policies and bylaws and why we amend some other ones. So thank you. Any other questions, comments on or debate on the motion? Okay, see none, call the question. All in favor? That's carried. Moving on to number 9.3. Go ahead, administration.
Good evening, Your Worship and Council. We've prepared an agenda item with regards to a grant application that was completed in mid-2021 with regards to the final phase of the downtown redevelopment project. The application was submitted to the federal government program, which is the Canada Community Revitalization Fund. And in earlier this year, administration received notification that we have received $500,000 from this grant application to support that project, the completion of that project. So we are here this evening to inform council and the public with regards to the receipt of those funds. As council can see in the lead sheet, the final surplus from this project, due to the grant timing, will be brought forward with recommendations as to their allocation as part of our year-end financial summary to council. So at this point in time, we're just providing notification to council and the public with regards to the receipt of the grant, and we'll be transacting the final allocation of where those grant funds will be provided to in our year-end financial summary early in 2023. So we wish to share in the congratulations with regards to these additional funds that are provided to this project, and just answer any questions, if possible, for council at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and definitely a good news story to end the calendar year off. Members of council, any questions for clarity and understanding? Okay, see none. Councillor Plechko for the motion, please.
Yes, thank you, Worship. The Town Council accept receipt of the Canada Community Revitalization Grant Award for information.
Okay. Any questions, comments, and debate on the motion? Okay. See none. On behalf of the Town Council and our staff, and definitely our residents, thank you very much for applying for the grant and being able to receive it. I know a lot of times when we sit around this table and we talk about projects, sometimes things go unfunded or they're added to the tax base, and then there's also a mark that we're applying for grant funding. And sometimes this grant funding comes in after the project, as here is the case on the Main Street redevelopment project, coming after we finish the entire project and still receiving the grant. So again, as we see, all the numbers are proposed in terms of tax budgets and corporate plans, and it's never set in stone until actually the project's done and all the applications have been either approved or denied in terms of grant funding. So just a little heads up, as we talk about corporate plan, sometimes it looks like a big number, but when we actually let the process work itself out, it usually comes lower than what we project. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. And that ends that. Moving on to number 10, which is council discussion. So members of council, again, this is the time to update other members of council or administrative staff on anything that you'd like to bring forward. Councilor Plechko.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to say thank you to all of the administration, everybody that works at the town for a fantastic first year again on council. I think this is a great community. You guys are building a great community and you have a great team. Wish everybody a Merry Christmas and prosperous New Year, and we look forward to working with you again in the future.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson?
Your worship, it's been a busy couple of weeks. I've really appreciated the opportunity to be present for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee Medal presentation. The general manager, and I'm not quite sure what the title is there, FCSS and all things important, Ms. Gilchrist, did a beautiful job for that, and some very, very worthy recipients of the medal. I actually was brought to tears on 2 occasions that evening, so it was an honor to be able to attend that. And also the 1-year anniversary of Skin Tribe downtown. Sometimes it's hard for a business to open, certainly was as we came out of COVID, but this group of women got together and opened a fabulous shop, and I was very pleased to have so many representatives from council there with me to congratulate them on a full year in business. And the Red Apple Toy Drive, that was a success, and people couldn't quit helping. They just kept doing events afterward and gaining more toys. At one point, I had a quick conversation with Ed Burney with the Kinsman, and he suggested to me they anticipated possibly 1,400 people would need help this Christmas. So it was lovely to see such a community turnout.
Thank you for that update, Councillor Hansard. Councillor Goins?
Thank you, Your Worship. Wanted to say Merry Christmas to everybody, as well as a shout out to our General Manager of Planning and Infrastructure. There was some garbage mix up on Friday in the community of Greybrier, and him and his team were very quick to get it dealt with. And I wanted to say thank you that those missed garbage cans were picked up this afternoon. And that is all.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just echo Councillor Palechko's comments, just again in regards to our administration, as well as fellow council colleagues. It is another year been and gone, and so it's wonderful to have the team that we do around the table, both from the staff perspective and the council perspective. I sincerely appreciate everything that's provided to us and our abilities to do our job representing the public and the residents of the town of Stony Plain. So thank you very much for that, and same to my council colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I actually have a question this evening, and that's related to our citizens at large board appointments. And looking, excuse me, on our website, it looks like we have a couple of vacancies on 2 or 3 different committees here. Now, I think, actually, I'm not going to think, I'm going to ask, what is the process for members of the community to participate in one of those board appointments?
Good question.
Thank you, Your Worship, through to Councillor Anderson. So on our town website and our boards and committee pages, we list all our boards and our current vacancies and the requirements to apply to those boards. So some of them have specific requirements and what they're looking for. We have an online application that people can apply and submit directly online, or for those that can't, we have a paper application. They can drop it off at Town Hall, and we accept applications throughout the year if there is a vacancy in hopes of filling those.
Perfect, thank you for that. Is there a system in place? I was just looking through our citizens at large board member selection policy here for board appointments outside of that application process. So maybe through their work with town administration, or some of the work that's going on in the community, where we could invite somebody to be appointed to those boards, or is it strictly through the application process?
Currently, at this time, it's currently through the application process. By all means, you can encourage somebody and invite them to apply, and those applications will be forwarded to the board representatives for interview and appointment, recommendation for appointment. And as we've stated at a few council meetings, our board and committee review is going through a thorough review in 2023. It's top of our work plan, and so that is something we will take under advisement as we head into that project.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. I see the review date would have been this year. I know there's been some work going on there that pushes it into next year. But I would love to see, potentially an opportunity there for, an appointment. I think about some of the organizations in our community, particularly on the cultural side, that have kind of come together and are doing amazing things in terms of celebrating culture in the community, where I think an invitation to participate in something like the Cultural Roundtable would be appropriate. And so certainly something when this policy comes back into chambers after the review, I look forward to some dialogue at that time. So thank you for the information there. And I think that's it for questions, but just a couple of things as our colleagues have mentioned. The Kinsmen have done some phenomenal work this year, looking at their list of donation sites in Stony Plain alone reaches well over 50. And so we know the Kinsmen spearhead that initiative, but it truly is a community event. 50 plus businesses and then, the local schools as well. I think the number that Councillor Hansard mentioned was 1,400 in the greater, Parkland area families in terms of receiving support this season. And I think that's tremendous. I know many of us had the opportunity to work with Tim Hortons as well, with the Smile Cookie campaign to decorate cookies with all of the proceeds going to this initiative. And so a huge thank you to Tim Hortons, their staff, for all the energy and effort that goes into that. I know when we showed up, they already had 50 dozen cookies sitting there waiting for us. And so a tremendous amount of work goes into that. And then obviously the community that supports that. And so just a tremendous appreciation for all of the work that they do as they go this week into packaging and distributing those gifts over the next week or so. So a huge thank you to them. Another one that has made the news actually regionally, I think was even on some of the large news outlets, was our very own Stony Plain Lane, which was renamed this year. But Angela Dubois does some amazing work pulling the community together. Tremendous support for the food bank in terms of food donations and financial donations. So I looked this evening for the totals, hoping they would have announced those. They haven't come out yet, but again, another way that the community comes together in support of our residents. So a huge thank you to them. And then finally, had the privilege to celebrate Christmas with the Spruce Grove Stony Plain Filipino Canadian Association last night. And those that know me know I'm not a dancer, but there may or may not be some Christmas Zumba videos floating around out there right now. But had a great time, celebrating Christmas with their organization, and certainly appreciate all the work that they do in our community. And so with that, wishing administration, council, our community members as well, a happy holidays, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship, for picking me last, because that makes mine nice and simple. I just get to wish everybody, all the town administration and my fellow councillors, and of course the residents of Stony Plain, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you, Councillor Meyer. Appreciate that. Okay. Just a question for administration. I think last council meeting, Councillor Pletko asked about the maintenance on Range Road 12. An email correspondence supposed to come up. I have not seen that. So can administration provide where that's at, please?
Your Worship, thank you for the question. I recall sending a response to that, but I'll just reiterate a couple of things within the email. So staff did go take a look at the status of Range Road 12. There was, pardon me, I'm just trying to recall exactly what I wrote in the response, but there was some sanding on the road on the Sunday before and also the following Tuesday or Thursday, I believe. It is a priority 1 road, so it is addressed as quick progression as we can get to. The level of snowfall and of course, the amount of resources available may slow down it getting to on the list, but it is on our priority roadways. We do have some new staff at the town who are getting acclimatized to our snow level of service and the town itself. So we've emphasized to them to make sure to keep an eye on that location for any snow drifts or other hazards that could make the conditions less favorable for users of the roadway.
Okay, thank you for that. And I do ask that question because with the fluctuations in weather of the ice melting and the snow melting, certain areas of that road are shaded and they are more dangerous than others. So just, again, heads up for that because that it is, you mentioned, Priority 1 road. It is also to a rural standard, which then also has a lot more kind of pitfalls to that. So to having that taken care of in a speedy manner would be probably better. Thank you. I just wanted to just thank the members of Graybar for putting together Stony Plain Lane. If residents have not gone out to see it, it used to be called the 12 Streets of Christmas or 12 Streets of Graybar. A lot of streets participated in making that kind of our focal point of Stony Plain for Christmas. There are other locations within Stony Plain that have also Christmas decorations, but they've just got together and they've kind of created a group to highlight that. And as mentioned by the Deputy Mayor, it has gained attention on TV and also nationally, so it is good to put Stony Plain on the map for something that's very, very positive in terms of building some Christmas cheer within our community. With that, I just wanted to thank everyone and wish everybody Merry Christmas. It has been a great year in 2022. Time sure flies when you're having fun, and it was just like yesterday, it was January 1st, and we were celebrating New Year's. So kudos to our staff for the work that was accomplished over 2022. Looking forward for more great things to happen for the next couple of years of our council term. Okay, moving on with our agenda, we do have a closed session. So again, members of council and to administration and to those that are participating and watching, there is a motion that goes into closed session, which allows council to have updates from administration staff to protect the privacy of individuals or the subject topic. There's no motions in closed session except for the motion to come out of closed session. So if there's any direction after that, there would be a motion made in public to direct staff to do anything. If you'd like to be notified when we come out of closed session, you're more than happy to send an email to our legislative services, or I think it's legislative. What is the email?
Your Worship, legislative@stonyplain.com.
Okay, so it's legislative@stonyplain.com. Or you can just sign the sheet and let recording secretary know as you leave chambers, and we will call you back in when we're ready to come out of closed session. Deputy Mayor, with that, I need a motion to go into closed session, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that Town Council move into closed session to discuss per FOIP Section 27, 11.1, insurance and legal update.
Okay, thank you very much. And before I call the question, just FYI, once I call the question, I will take a 10-minute recess to allow the members that are not supposed to be in chambers to leave, and then we can then start our closed session in 10 minutes. Call the question, all in favor? Okay, and that's carried. Thank you. Our meeting. So as mentioned earlier, during closed session, there's no motions in closed session except for the motions that come out of closed session. And that was made by Councillor Hansard, and that was passed unanimously 7-0. To administration, has anybody emailed legislative services to be notified of us coming out of closed session?
Your worship, they have not.
Okay, I know that was a full gallery, but has anybody registered to be notified from the gallery?
Your worship, no one has notified in the gallery.
Okay, so that nobody has been asked to be notified, so we can continue on with our meeting. With that, it comes to our agenda number 12, which is adjournment, and that ends our council meeting for tonight, for December 12th, and for the year of 2022. With that, we wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We are adjourned.